All right, for our lesson today, we're going to look at 3 different skills that are covered at the end of the chapters. So this is preparing for 8th grade, but just a quick review. A lot of low scores yesterday on the skill here. So if you want to go back and fix this, any of you, you definitely can. So the whole idea was you find your probability first of the situation, and then you apply it to the total. So here it was 84 times, okay? On the next one, 192. So first you have to find the probability, which is inside of the story, right? So the spinner divided into 7, an odd section, so you have to find that probability first, an odd number, all right? So you have to then think of your target, 1, 3, 5, and 7, right? So that's 4 out of 7, and then you put it to out of 84. All right, so that's that. If you want to go back and fix that up, go right ahead. All right, on to today's lesson. So our first idea here is exponents. I know you guys have covered this before, and it's the whole idea here of what is 5 to the 3rd power. All right, so upon first look, some of you guys might have done this. 5 times 3 equals 15. That's definitely not the case. And how do you remember that? The little 3 is raised, so it's not the same size, so you're not just multiplying. What that means, again, is you have your base number and you multiply by itself that number of times. So it's like a little formula, right? Write the number of the base this number of times. And now when you multiply, you do 2 at a time. So 25 times 5 is 125. All right, so that's a review on exponents. All right, so today what we're going to do is we're going to focus on negative exponents. All right, and so when you have a negative exponent, all right, I'll show you an example here. Let me clear this out. I'm just going to go to the next slide, actually. They're asking you to take a look at what is the relationship here. So when we're going from our powers of 4, that's 4 to the 4th power, 4 to the 3rd power. So take a look. If you're looking at your products, what's happening there? It's actually dividing by 4. So you keep on getting smaller and smaller and smaller. All right, so if you were to keep on going, you're going to divide by 4 again. What's 4 divided by 4? It's 1. And if you were to go again, what's 1 divided by 4? It's 1/4. All right, so if you follow the pattern there, that's 4 to the 0 power. This is 4 to the negative 1st power. So this is the rule now for doing negative exponents, okay? So let's look at this, all right? So this is how you do it. So if you have 4 to the negative 1st power, this is how you do it. So first of all, you ignore the negative and you do 4 to the 1st power, and that is 4, right? You put that on the bottom, and then you make it a fraction over 1. All right, so this is where if you use the strategy, if you think about what it looks like, it's actually very helpful, all right? Because if you look at the negative basically becomes your fraction line, all right? So you're basically using the fraction line, and then you're doing 4 to the 1st power underneath, all right? So this is what it would look like, all right? So let's look at another example. Let's say that we have 4 to the negative 2nd power. All right, so first of all, let's ignore the negative. What's 4 to the 2nd power? It's 16. But now, since it has to be small, it's a fraction, and it just goes over 1. So all of these numbers, it doesn't matter what it is, you put 4 to the 2nd power, 4 to the 3rd power on the bottom and make it a fraction out of 1. All right, let's look at a few examples now. All right, here we go. So let's look here. All right, so it would take 10 to the negative 2nd power. So what does that mean again? It's going to mean 1 over 10 to the 2nd power. It does not mean I have a negative number. So now I solve. 10 times 10 is 100. It's a fraction, 1 over 100. All right, here, this one, what does that mean? 6 to the negative 3rd power. It means 1 over 6 to the 3rd power. All right, the negative is making it a fraction. All right, in this case, all right, this is only for exponents now. All right, and now I'm going to expand. 6 times 6 times 6. 36 times 6 is 216. So that is the answer there. All right, so that's the steps. All right, ignore the negative first. Find the power, 6 to the 3rd power, and then put it on the bottom of a fraction. So all of your answers for all of these problems are going to have a fraction with a numerator of 1. All right, so that's how you do those. The next type of problem that we had were square roots. All right, and what we have here is the idea that when you had a square number, it was a number times itself, right? So in this case, it's 6 times 6, and you think of the area of a square, that equals 36. All right, so now when we take a root, what we're going to do is we're going to go backwards. All right, so let's say you have an area of 36. Now you're going to take the square root. That's the symbol that it is used to do this operation. This is what it's asking you to do. All right, so what times what gets you to 36? What one number? All right, and this is where knowing your squares will help, right? In your times tables, all right, if you did 5 times 5, that's 25. So it's not, the answer would not be 5. It's, of course, 6 times 6. All right, 6 times 6 is 36. And so the square root of 36 is 6. All right, so you're going to use that now for all these numbers. Take a look here. So let's look at our examples. What's the square root of 4? So what times what? What one number times itself equals 4? That would be 2. All right, so that answer is 2. How about this one here? What times what equals 64? Just ignore the negative for a second. All right, so this one here, the answer would be 8 times 8. All right, in this case, since there's a negative in front of it, it means this. All right, so when you take a negative number and you square it, you have a negative times a negative, which is always going to get a positive number. All right, so it's very possible to look at every number and say, okay, it actually has 2 square roots, the positive root and the negative roots. That's what they're talking about there. So that's actually just negative 8. So do the inside first and then just stick the negative on the outside. How about this one here? What times what equals 9? That would be 3. And then last one here, a little bit more challenging. What times what equals 400? All right, so the easiest way to do it is think here. What times what equals 4? That would be 2. And then we have the 2 zeros, right? So that comes from multiplying 20 times 20, the 2 zeros and the 4. So we have the negative in front. There it is. All right, last example, we have a skill called cubic roots. This is very similar to square roots, but now since we have 3 dimensions, you're going to have an extra aspect to that. All right, so in this case right here, in order to find our volume, it's 4 times 4 times 4. All right, so what do we have? We have 16 for the first part. 16 times 4 is 64. So on the inside, we have 64 cubic units. So now if we're going to take the cube root, what it means, it's to do this. All right, think about what the root would be. All right, when you times it by itself 3 times to get to 64, the answer, of course, is 4. All right, so this is your answer for that. All right, so we have some examples to look at. Let's look here. All right, so what is the cubic root of 8? All right, so it's basically asking you to do, oops, gave you the answer. This times this times this. And the more you guys use these, the more familiar you'll get with them. All right, what number times itself? In this case, it has to be 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. So the cubic root of 8 would be 2. All right, how about here? What times what equals 125. All right, so there's a clue right there. You see the 5 and you see the 25. That's going to help you what gets to there. All right, and that's this. 5 times 5 is to 25. Then you times it by 5, and then you get to 125. So this answer right here is 5. How about here? What times what equals 1,000? And again, this is a nice little power of 10 one, right? It has the 3 zeros. So that means I multiply 10 together 3 times. All right, to get 1,000. So the answer is the cubic root is 10. Then lastly here, what times what gets me there? We saw that on the other page. All right, it would be 4. 4 times 4 is 16, times 4 is 64. All right, so those are cubic roots. All right, we had the square roots, and then we had the negative roots, or the negative exponents from above. All right, so your assignment is going to be to complete these now. All right, so just type these in the boxes and submit to me, and then we'll have more practice tomorrow.